have a 6.4 megabyte WAV file in my Outlook. I have had it for 13 months. I have not opened it. The file landed in my inbox on October 11th, 2022, at 3:47 in the afternoon because someone in IT had transposed 2 digits on the conference recording forwarding list. The dial extension 60240817, which belongs to my supervisor, was entered as 60240187, which belongs to me. The attachment is named Q4-pricing-courtesy-ms-xr-xyx.wav. The word courtesy is in the file name. The word courtesy is the most important word in this story. I am the one who eventually played the file. I am the one who walked into a 14th floor office on a New Haven street and put a flash drive on a lawyer's oak table. I am the one who signed the federal notification of original information on December 17, 2023, under seal. 4 years later, the seal came off. 5 pricing directors at 5 generic drug manufacturers pleaded guilty under the Sherman Act, Section 1. 5 corporations paid an aggregate $1.161 billion. A federal whistleblower program that started in July of 2025 paid me roughly $30 million net of fees and tax, and every dollar went into a foundation in my father's name. Let me tell you how a file I did not want to open became the file I had to open. Let me tell you about a 71-year-old neighbor with a beagle named Sergeant and a Tier 1 copay that quietly tripled, and about a sister at an Antonine convent in northern Lebanon who taught my father a single sentence in 1962 when he was 15 years old and sweeping ash from a damaged oven. Let me tell you about a man named Garrett Whitfield Stanton who walked through 47 bilateral phone calls with 4 competitors over almost 5 years, and who never once in those calls used the word agree, because he believed that not using the word made the calls legal. He was wrong. He was sincere. He was a federal docket entry by April of 2027. He never apologized to me. I did not ask him to. My name is Nadine Therese Maroon Karam. I am 49 years old. I was, until the morning of February 14, 2024, the Director of Financial Planning and Analysis for Pricing and Government Contracts at Crestline Therapeutics. I built and maintained a 47-tab Excel workbook called CT_pricing_master. I could open that workbook in the dark. I did, often. My professional life was not in the pricing committee. My professional life was downstream of the pricing committee. I modeled the prices. I projected the margins. I reported the variance. I sat in a meeting room with 8 black chairs and a Polycom in the center of a mahogany table on the 4th floor of a building off Route 1 in Princeton, and I did not vote. I have never voted on a price in my life. I have only ever modeled them. That distinction kept me sleeping at night for 22 years across 3 companies. It is not a distinction the Department of Justice ultimately recognized, but it is one I held onto longer than I should have. The Sherman Act does not have a non-voting attendee provision. The Sherman Act has a clause that says if you sit in the room while a conspiracy is being conducted and you have actual knowledge of the conspiracy and you take no action, you may be deemed to have ratified the conspiracy. Section 1 does not care about the seating chart. My lawyer explained that to me on November 3, 2023, in a 14th floor office in New Haven. She said it twice because I asked her to repeat it. She was patient. She had been a federal prosecutor for 11 years before she went into private practice. She knew how the question lands. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind. My father was born in February of 1948 in a village called Bashari in the mountains of northern Lebanon. Bashari is the village of the Maronite saint Sharbel Makhlouf. It is the village of Khalil Gibran, who wrote The Prophet. It is a village of cedars 2,000 years old. Some of them were standing when the apostles were walking. My father told me that twice when I was a child, and each time he said it the same way. His mother died in childbirth in 1954. His father was a small olive farmer. He sent my father and his surviving brother to the Antonine Sisters Orphanage School in Bashari in 1955. My father was 7. He stayed at the convent school for 10 years. In 1962, when my father was 14, there was an incident with the oven. The Antonine Sisters had a wood-fired bread oven in the convent kitchen. The oven baked bread for the orphans and for the village poor. One night in late autumn, men from a rival village faction, the details of which my father never gave me, and which I never tried to learn, deliberately damaged the oven. They broke the chimney. They cracked the breadstone. They poured something on the embers that turned to a smoke that made the kitchen unusable for 2 weeks. The sisters did not call the police. They swept the ash. They repaired what they could. They prayed. The Mother Superior of the convent at the time was a Maronite Antonine sister whose name I never learned, because my father never told me her name. He always called her the Mother. She was, by his telling, a small woman in her 60s, with the calm of someone who had decided long ago that she was not afraid of any earthly thing. On the morning after the oven incident, she gathered the orphan boys in the kitchen. They were holding brooms. They were sweeping ash. She said one sentence to them, in Levantine Arabic, while they swept. She did not raise her voice. She said it once, and then she walked out, and my father said the boys kept sweeping in silence for 45 minutes before anyone spoke. The sentence was this: Ya binti, al-haqq kad yathqul, walakinnahu la yamut. My daughter, the truth may grow heavy, but it does not die. She said it, Ya binti, because she said it to all of them as if she were saying it to a daughter. She used the form. My father remembered it. My father said that sentence to me in our kitchen on Schaefer Highway in Dearborn when I was 11 years old. I had told a small lie to a librarian about a torn page in a copy of A Wrinkle in Time. The librarian had called my mother. My mother had called my father at the Ford Wixom stamping plant. My father had come home that night and sat with me at the small Formica kitchen table and asked me 3 questions. I gave him 3 honest answers. He nodded. Then he said the sentence. He translated it. He said, "When you are tempted to make a small lie smaller by making it disappear, remember that it does not disappear. It only grows heavier in the pocket where you put it." He said it to me again the night I told him I was going to apply to a Princeton MBA program in 1999. I was sitting on the porch of the bungalow on Schaefer Highway. He was sitting in his metal chair with the green plastic webbing, the one he kept on the porch for 40 years. He said the sentence as a benediction that time, not as a warning, and the meaning shifted in the saying. He was telling me that whatever I built would weigh on me, and that the weight was a kind of life. He said it for the 3rd and last time on a Sunday afternoon in February of 2023. He was in his bed at home in Dearborn, in the small room off the back of the bungalow, after his second cardiologist had told us in November that the congestive failure had moved past medication. He was conscious that day. He was not afraid. He held my right hand in both of his. He said the sentence in a voice that had gotten thin. I said it back to him in Arabic, the only time in my adult life I had said the whole phrase to him out loud, and he closed his eyes for a long time, and when he opened them, he said one word in Syriac that I will not write down because it is between him and me, and he died 6 days later, on the 4th of March, 2023, at 7:41 in the evening, with my mother holding his left hand. We buried him at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan, in the Maronite section, on the 8th of March. The granite headstone we commissioned has a cedar tree carved into the upper left corner. The Garshuni inscription along the bottom edge is the Antonine Mother sentence in the calligraphic Syriac script that uses Arabic letters with diacritical marks. Sister Marie Rose Gattas Sadeh, the last surviving Antonine sister from my father's orphan years, who had been a young sister of 20 when she met my father aged 10, was now 86 and could not fly to Detroit. She sent a telegram. The telegram contained the sentence, "That is the inheritance I carried into the room where the pricing committee met. That is the inheritance I carried while the file sat in the folder I named X-DO-not-forward for 13 months. The truth may grow heavy, but it does not die. I did not yet know how heavy. I was about to find out. Crestline Therapeutics is a mid-cap generic and specialty pharmaceutical company founded in 2013 out of a Bain Capital roll-up of 3 legacy generic injectable plants in North Carolina, Indiana, and Puerto Rico. The headquarters are in a 4-story brick and glass building off Route 1 in Princeton, New Jersey, with a small employee parking lot and a larger visitor lot. The 4th floor is the executive floor. The pricing committee room is at the southern end of the 4th floor, behind a frosted glass door that says Pricing Committee on a small bronze plaque. The room is 22 feet long by 16 feet wide. The conference table is mahogany. The 8 chairs are ergonomic black mesh. The polycom at the center of the table is a triangular speakerphone with 3 microphones and a single red button that, when pressed, mutes the bridge. There is a 60-inch projector screen built into the south wall. There is a glass carafe of water on a small side table by the window. There is no other decoration. There is a printout of the agenda on each seat, single-sided, on plain white paper, 12-point Times New Roman. The voting members of the pricing committee, during my 8 years as director, were Garrett Whitfield Stanton as chair, the chief commercial officer Helena Tarazi Bryson, 3 SVPs from generic sales, specialty sales, and trade and distribution, the general counsel, Edward Stowe Wickersham, and outside antitrust counsel from a Manhattan firm who attended by phone and who almost never spoke. 7 voting members. I attended every meeting. I sat to Garrett's immediate left, opposite the polycom. My laptop ran the projected pricing model. I advanced the model from one molecule to the next. I displayed sensitivity analyses Garrett requested in real time. I answered modeling questions. I did not speak unless spoken to. I did not vote. The meetings occurred quarterly, the 2nd Thursday of January, April, July, and October. They started at 9 in the morning. They ended between 12 and 12:30. Lunch was brought in by a catering service from Princeton called Olives, which had nothing to do with my family, but which my father always found funny when I told him about it on the phone. Olives. The agenda always covered the same 14 molecules, in the same order, every quarter. The 14 molecules had been selected by Garrett in 2017 in a memo I helped him draft, as the molecules where Crestline either held a top 3 market share position or was exposed to a top 3 competitor whose pricing decisions would materially affect Crestline's margin. Metformin extended release 750 milligrams was molecule 7 on the agenda, every quarter for 8 years. The word courtesy entered my hearing for the first time in April of 2020, the 2nd Thursday of April. The meeting was held by Zoom because of the early COVID lockdown. Garrett, by Zoom, said to Helena Tarazi Bryson, while the committee was on a 5-minute break and the bridge was still recording, that he had done the usual courtesy work with his counterpart at Merit the day before. He said it the way you might say, "I had a coffee with him yesterday." Helena nodded and said, "Good," and the meeting resumed. I made a small note in my 4x6 ring-bound notebook. The note said, April 8 or 9, 2020, GWS Merit, courtesy work reference. I did not know what the reference meant. I assumed it meant some kind of professional civility. I assumed it meant a conference badge exchange. The word came up again in October of 2021. We were back in person, the 2nd Thursday of October. The agenda was the standard 14 molecules. Before the meeting, in the small anteroom outside the pricing committee room, where there is a coffee machine and a glass canister of biscotti, I overheard Garrett on his cell phone, half turned toward the window. He said, "Thanks for the courtesy, and we are landing in the same zone," and hung up. He turned to me, smiled, said, "Good morning, Nadine," and walked into the conference room. I made another note. October 14, 2021, GWS Courtesy Zone Reference. I underlined the word zone. The 3rd time I heard the word, I was at an industry conference for accessible medicine manufacturers, held that year at a hotel in Washington, D.C., the 3rd week of October 2021. I was attending as a delegate of Crestline. The conference is held in a large 2nd-floor ballroom with 3 breakout rooms on the side. The afternoon of the 2nd day, I was in the corridor outside the main ballroom, and Garrett was standing near a pillar, talking to a man I did not know. The man was Indian American, mid-50s, in a navy suit and a yellow tie with small navy diamonds. I learned later that his name was Surya Krishnan Venkataraman Hart, and that he was the Vice President of Pricing US at Merit Pharmaceuticals. Garrett said to him, and I heard this clearly because I was walking past at a normal pace, "I will give you the usual courtesy before the Q1 cycle." And Surya said back, "Always appreciated." I kept walking. I did not write a note that time. I told myself it was hallway small talk. I told myself it was a euphemism for sharing public earnings call language. I told myself, in the way I had trained myself for 22 years to tell myself, that the senior people had a Manhattan antitrust partner on the speakerphone and that my job was to model, not to interpret. The Sherman Act has a name for what I was doing. The name is willful blindness. My lawyer said the words in her office in New Haven 13 months later, and I did not flinch when she said them because they fit me too well. On Tuesday, October 11th, 2022, at 3:47 in the afternoon, I was at my desk in my office on the 4th floor of the Crestline building. A windowless interior room, 11 by 9, with a single large monitor and a small framed photograph of my father at the Ford Wixom plant in 1985. My Outlook chimed. The sender was the Crestline IT Pricing Committee distribution mailbox. The subject line was, Q4 Pricing, courtesy Merit MSXRXYX.WAV. There was a single attachment, 6.4 megabytes. I knew immediately the email was misrouted. The pricing committee recording emails went to Garrett's office. They did not come to me. The extension in the auto-generated header was 602-40187, mine. Garrett's is 602-40817. 2 transposed digits in a server-side forwarding rule. I did not call IT. I did not forward the email to Garrett. I did not delete it. I sat at my desk for 11 minutes without moving. Then, I opened my Outlook folder pane on the left side of the window, and I created a new folder under my inbox, at the bottom of the folder list, below the folder named Archive and the folder named Personal. I named the new folder X-do-not-forward. I dragged the email from the inbox into the new folder. I did not save the attachment to my hard drive. I did not export it. I left it inside the email, inside the folder. I closed my laptop. I walked down the hall to the kitchenette on the 4th floor. I made a cup of peppermint tea, which is what I drank when I needed to think. I carried the tea back to my office. I sat at my desk with the laptop closed for another 14 minutes. Then I opened the laptop and worked on the Q3 close model variance reconciliation until 5:45, when I packed my bag, drove home to Hopewell on Route 206, made dinner, helped Marielle with her clarinet practice, sat on the porch with Daniel for 30 minutes after the children went to bed, and slept 4 hours. I knew what was on the recording. I did not need to play it to know. The file name had 4 pieces of metadata. The word courtesy in the title, the word merit, the name of Crestline's largest generic competitor, the word MS, which is a Crestline internal abbreviation for manufacturer strategy, the string XR, which signaled an extended release formulation, the string XYX, a Crestline internal placeholder used when the molecule code is being kept off the file name for surface confidentiality. The metadata told me that the recording was a pricing committee conference call concerning a coordination dialogue between Crestline, Merit, and at least one other competing manufacturer on a molecule whose code was deliberately obscured. The timestamp told me that the call had occurred the previous afternoon, Monday, October 10th, between 3 and 5 p.m. I knew which molecule. The coming quarterly pricing committee meeting on the second Thursday of October, just 3 days away, had metformin extended release 750 milligrams as agenda molecule 7. The Q4 WAC band negotiation for that molecule was the only material pricing decision on the calendar. I did not play the file. I worked the next quarter. I built the Q4 model. I attended the October Pricing Committee meeting on the 13th. The committee approved a Q4 WAC band on metformin XR 750 milligrams of $3,150 per 1,000-tablet wholesale carton to $3,180 per 1,000. The vote was unanimous. I sat to Garrett's left and operated the model. The catering brought a salad and roast vegetable sandwich tray from Olive's. I ate half a sandwich. I drove home. I did not play the file. The folder X-DO-not-forward was visible in my Outlook side pane every time I opened Outlook for the next 13 months. I saw the folder. I did not click into it. The folder was a small black bar at the bottom of the side pane. When I needed to forward an email, my eyes would drift past the folder and I would think the same single sentence every time with the same intonation. Not yet. Not yet. The 13 months between October 11th, 2022 and October 29th, 2023 are the most important interval in this story. They are also the most embarrassing. I want to be careful how I describe them. I do not want to dress them up. I do not want to make them noble. I was a 47-year-old woman with a 6.4 megabyte file in a folder on her work computer, and I knew what was on the file, and I did not play it, and I built 4 quarters of pricing models, and I attended 4 pricing committee meetings, and I drank peppermint tea. I clicked into the folder twice in those 13 months. Twice. Both times I selected the email, hovered over open, and did not click. The first time was Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. I was in the home office in Hopewell, the converted kitchen pantry with the white IKEA desk, packing my laptop for the drive to Detroit. My father was in hospice at home since the first week of February. I clicked into the folder. I hovered. I closed the laptop. I put it in my bag. I drove to Dearborn. My father died on the 4th of March. The funeral was on the 8th. Sister Marie Rose's telegram from Bashari arrived at the funeral home on the 7th, in Arabic, with an English translation in her own thin, tremulous hand. The first sentence of her telegram was the Mother Superior sentence. She wrote it in her own hand because she did not trust a telegraph clerk to spell the Arabic correctly. I came back to New Jersey on the 11th of March. I went back to work on the 14th. The folder was still there. It did not move. The second time I clicked into the folder was the 3rd week of August. Crestline holds an annual sales conference in Las Vegas. Garrett was scheduled to give the second-day keynote, titled Mature Generics Pricing in a CPI-Compressed Era. He spoke for 42 minutes about rational pricing discipline as the responsible exercise of price clearing in a competitive market, citing the industry trade group's 2017 white paper, citing Sherman Act case law in passing, asserting that bilateral pre-cycle market signal communication was distinguishable from per se illegal coordination under United States versus Saucony Vacuum. He spoke confidently. He believed every word. After the keynote, he found me in the corridor near the breakout rooms. He smiled. He said, "Good keynote, Nadine. The Q2 model came in clean. Well done." I said, "Thank you, Garrett." He said, "See you in October." He walked off toward the espresso bar. I went to my hotel room. I opened my laptop. I clicked into the folder. I hovered over open. I did not click. I ordered a Caesar salad from room service. I ate it. I went to bed at 9:20. The rest of those 13 months, I let the folder sit in the side pane like a sleeping animal I did not want to wake. I built Q1. I built Q2. I built Q3. I attended 4 pricing committee meetings. Metformin XR 750 milligrams remained at $3,150 to $3,180 per 1,000 carton for all 4 quarters. The band held. Crestline's revenue held. My bonus held. My RSU grant for 2024 was put on the schedule. I performed my role. My daughter Marielle, who was 11 that year and just turning 12, read her grandfather's old Arabic copy of Khalil Gibran's Al-Mawaqib that summer in the cool of the back porch. She did not read Arabic. She photographed pages on her phone and brought them to me to translate. One Wednesday afternoon in late July, she handed me her phone, the screen showing a particular stanza. I translated for her. Life does not give you what you ask for. Life gives you what you build, and then it watches how you carry it. Marielle nodded as if I had told her something she had already known and forgotten. She walked back to the porch. I sat in the kitchen for a long time without moving. My son Emil was training for cross-country. Daniel was at NJ Transit. My mother was alone in the bungalow on Schaefer Highway with my father's clothes still in his bedroom closet. I called her every Sunday at 4. We did not talk about the folder. No one knew about the folder. Sunday, October 29th, 2023, 16:14 Eastern Daylight Time. I am sweeping maple leaves on the concrete driveway in front of our garage on Pinhook Road in Hopewell. The leaves are the bright crimson of a Norway maple at peak color, 2 days from drop. The sky is high blue, mid-60 Fahrenheit, light wind from the northwest. Daniel is bent under the open hood of our Subaru Outback, changing the oil. He has done his own oil change on every car we have owned since we married. He says he likes the way it makes Sunday smell. Mr. Erasmus Walter Cunningham is walking up Pinhook Road from the south. He is 71 years old. He is wearing a tan windbreaker and dark brown corduroy trousers, and the soft shoes with the Velcro straps he switched to 2 years ago after his right hip started giving him trouble. He is leading his retired beagle Sergeant on a 6-foot leather leash. Sergeant is 9 years old that fall and a little gray around the muzzle. Mr. Cunningham is walking with his daughter, Tasha Cunningham-Worthing, who has come up from Hamilton for Sunday dinner. Tasha is in her late 30s, a paralegal at a Hamilton firm with 2 children younger than Marielle. They stop at the foot of our driveway. Sergeant sits on his haunches. Daniel straightens from the hood and wipes his hands on a rag. Mr. Cunningham asks Daniel about the road race the township is hosting next Saturday. Daniel says the route is going to be hell on his quads. Mr. Cunningham nods seriously, the way he nods at everything. Tasha says, "Dad, you should not be on your hip that long." Mr. Cunningham says, "Tasha, I am not running it. I am watching." Then Tasha says, almost as an aside, while Sergeant is sniffing at a leaf, something that I will replay in my head for the rest of my life. She says, "Dad's Medicare Part D recalibration letter came last week. We sat down and we redid the math on the diabetes pill." Mr. Cunningham nods, with the dignity I have always associated with him. He says, "Tasha and I had to do some new math on the diabetes pill." Tasha puts her hand on his shoulder. She says, "We worked it out, Dad. Don't worry about it." I am holding the rake. I am standing about 8 feet from them. I say, quietly, mostly because I cannot stop myself, "Which formulation are you on, Mr. Cunningham?" He turns to me. He says, with a small, kind smile, "Metformin XR, 750, the generic. Costco has it. I have been on it since '98. Crestline has 31% market share in the Metformin XR 750 mg formulation. The WAC band that Crestline and 4 other generic manufacturers have held since the second quarter of 2020 has been $3,150 to $3,180 per 1,000 carton. The Tier 1 copay band in Medicare Part D plans for that formulation went from $4 to $7 in 2019 to $34 to $36 in 2021 after the Part D plan formulary recalibration absorbed the elevated WAC into the Tier 1 step. Tasha Cunningham-Worthing has been paying the difference from her own paycheck since the first quarter of 2022. I do not say any of this. I say, "Thank you, Mr. Cunningham, I just wondered. Take care of yourself." Mr. Cunningham nods. He says, "See you tomorrow morning, Mrs. Karam." He always uses my husband's name. He tugs gently on the leash. Sergeant stands up. They walk south on Pinhook Road. Tasha looks back at me once, briefly. She does not say anything. Daniel says, "You okay?" I say, "Yes, I am going inside." He says, "You want me to put on coffee?" I say, "No, I am just going to stand in the kitchen for a minute." He nods and goes back to the engine. I walk through the open garage door. I walk through the mudroom. I walk into the kitchen. I put the rake down by the back door. I stand at the kitchen counter, on the side closest to the small, white IKEA desk in the converted pantry, which is visible through an open doorway. My laptop is on the desk. The screen is dark. I stand at the counter for 63 minutes. Daniel comes inside at one point, around 5:15, to use the bathroom, and he sees me standing there and does not ask. He has known me long enough. At 5:27, I walk to the desk. I sit down. I open the laptop. The screen wakes. Outlook is in the foreground. I navigate to the side pane. I click into the folder x-do-not-forward. I right-click the email. I select Save As. I save the attachment to a new folder on my hard drive named nk_personal_archive_Q4. I right-click the saved WAV file. I select Open. The file opens in Windows Media Player. I click Play. The recording is 6 minutes and 43 seconds long. It is a single take. There is no music. There is no introduction. There are two male voices on a clear telephone line. I recognize Garrett Whitfield Stanton's voice within the first 2 seconds because I have sat to his left in a conference room for 8 years. Garrett, calmly, almost cheerful in tone. Surya, just checking in before the cycle. We are landing the XR 750 in the 3150 to 3180 range. I wanted to flag that to you as a courtesy before the trade association call next week. The other voice. Indian American accent, mid-range, professional. I learn later, definitively, that this is Surya Krishnan Venkataraman Hart, VP Pricing US at Merit Pharmaceuticals. Surya. Garrett, that is in the right zone. We have been modeling 3140 to 3190. I appreciate the courtesy. Garrett. Of course. We are not coordinating. We are just respecting the market signal. Surya, with a small, dry laugh. Garrett, I have been doing this for 20 years. I understand the framework. Garrett. The CMS submission window is the 17th. We will land inside the 3150 floor on the AMP, and we will hold the IDD parallel. Will you match? Surya. We will match. We have the math built. Our submission window closes on the 20th. Garrett. Good. Aldermain already confirmed the floor at 3145 last Tuesday. West Haven is at 3160. Pellucid is at 3150. We are within a $35 band across 5 manufacturers. The signal is clean. Surya. Clean. Garrett. I will see you at the Trade Association panel next Thursday. The CMS reporting compliance session. Surya. See you then. Then, a longer section, 4 minutes 30 seconds, in which Garrett walks Surya through an analogous coordination dialogue on 3 other molecules. The phrasing is the same. The word coordinate never appears. The word courtesy appears 6 times. The word zone appears 11 times. The phrase market signal appears 4 times. The 2 men say goodbye. The call ends. I listened to the recording twice. I did not cry. I did not call Daniel. I sat at the desk with my hands flat on it, and I stared at the small olive wood Maronite cross above the desk, given to my husband by my father on our wedding morning 16 years earlier. Below it, a framed photograph of my father at St. Sharbel Warren in 1993, holding me at my confirmation, his hand on my right shoulder. I said one sentence aloud to the photograph, in Arabic, after 7 minutes of silence. Yaba, al-haqq kad yathqul, walakinnahu la yamut. Papa, the truth may grow heavy, but it does not die. That is the second time the sentence appears in this story. The first was the Mother Superior speaking it to my father in the convent kitchen in 1962. The second is me, on the evening of October 29, 2023, speaking it to my father's photograph 90 minutes after first hearing the recording I had carried in a folder for 13 months. I sat in the chair for 90 minutes. I did not move. At 21:30, Daniel knocked softly on the pantry doorway and asked if I was okay. I said I was very tired. I said I was going to bed early. I closed the laptop. I walked upstairs. I lay in bed next to Daniel, and I slept 4 hours and 17 minutes. At 4:47 in the morning, Monday, October 30th, I woke up in the dark, walked downstairs in my robe, sat at the kitchen pantry desk, opened a new Outlook draft, typed one sentence, and saved the draft. The sentence said, "I need an antitrust lawyer." I did not send the draft. I left it in the drafts folder. I put on coffee. I went back upstairs. I dressed for work. I drove to Princeton at 6:15. I worked a normal day. Itunde Adeyemi Brennan is a Nigerian-American attorney, born in Lagos, raised in Westchester County from age 5. Yale College, Yale Law, 11 years at the U.S. Attorney's Office, Eastern District of New York, criminal frauds. Brennan Stoddard Adeyemi, partner since 2012, with a practice that draws roughly half its work from the relator side of the bar. She had given a CLE presentation to Crestline's corporate counsel group in the third quarter of 2021 on antitrust compliance for senior pricing personnel. I had attended as a courtesy. I had taken her business card from the front table and kept it in the zippered pocket of my leather attaché. At 9:14 on the morning of Monday, October 30th, I sat in my office on the 4th floor of the Crestline building with the door closed, and I dialed her direct line from my cell phone. She answered after 3 rings. I said, "My name is Nadine Maroon Karam. You gave a presentation here in 2021. I have something I need to bring to you." She said, "When can you come to New Haven?" I said, 3 days. She said, "Friday at 1 p.m. The building is 1 Whitney Avenue, 14th floor." I said, "I will be there." I drove to New Haven on Friday, November 3rd, 2 hours and 40 minutes from Hopewell. I parked in the garage on Whitney. I rode the elevator to the 14th floor. The firm's reception was a small, dignified space with a single Lagos National Theatre lithograph on the back wall. She came out to get me at 1:01. She is tall, mid-50s, gray and black braided hair pulled into a low knot, glasses with thin wire frames. She wore a navy suit and a small silver pin in the shape of an old African mask. We walked to her office. She sat at her desk. I sat in the leather chair opposite. She took out a single yellow legal pad and a black pen. She said, "Tell me what you have." I spoke for 47 minutes. I gave her, in chronological order, my career history at Crestline, my role as director of FP&A pricing, my non-voting attendee status in the pricing committee, the names of the voting members, the quarterly cadence, the 14-molecule agenda, the molecule 7 metformin XR 750 issue, the WAC band history from 2015 to the present, my notebook entries documenting Garrett's 3 references to the word courtesy, the October 11th typo email, the folder X-DO-not-forward, the 13 months of dormancy, the Sunday, October 29th conversation in my driveway with Mr. Cunningham, and the playing of the recording. She listened. She wrote 3 pages of notes. When I finished, she set down the pen. She said, "Did you bring the recording?" I said yes. I reached into my attaché. I took out a small, sealed brown envelope containing a USB flash drive, a 64GB SanDisk Ultra, which earlier that morning I had used to transfer the WAV file, and a separate export of the 47-tab Excel workbook from my home laptop. I handed her the envelope. She said, "Do you have anywhere private to keep an additional copy of this drive? Somewhere outside your home, in a place no one would search?" I said, "My mother's kitchen pantry in Dearborn has a small Tunisian spice tin from the early 80s that holds za'atar. The tin has a hinged lid. There is room inside." She said, "Mail her the drive on Monday with the tin already in it, by USPS priority, with delivery confirmation, and ask her to keep the tin on the same shelf she has always kept it. Do not tell her what is in it. Tell her it is a gift of memory." I said, "All right." She said, "What we are looking at is a Sherman Act, Section 1, per se, criminal violation. The recording is unambiguous. The pattern of bilateral courtesy calls, the use of the word zone, the cross-confirmation across 5 competing manufacturers, the matched earnings call language. This is a per se case under Trenton Potteries and Saucony Vacuum. Section 1 does not require a written agreement. It requires only a meeting of the minds on price. We have a meeting of the minds, on tape, between two competing manufacturers. The Department of Justice Antitrust Division has a new whistleblower program codified earlier this year. The reward share is 15 to 30% of recovery. The aggregate recovery in this kind of multi-manufacturer generic pricing matter is likely to be in the high nine-figure range. She said, "Are you prepared for what filing this with the department will do to your career and your family?" I said, "My father died in March. He told me one sentence 3 times in my life. The third time was 6 days before he died. I have carried a file on my work computer for 13 months because I did not want to bear what the file would mean. The file is now bearing on me regardless. I am prepared." She said, "All right, we file on a notification of original information under the new program. The filing happens under federal seal. The seal is typically maintained for 2 to 4 years while the criminal investigation runs. I will represent you on a contingent basis, 28% of any reward after federal tax. We will execute the engagement letter today. You will not discuss this matter with anyone, including your husband, until after the indictments unseal. The cone of silence is total." I said, "My husband is going to know something is wrong." She said, "Tell him I am helping you with a family estate matter related to your father. Tell him it is complicated and confidential. Tell him you will explain when you can. He will accept that." I said, "He will." We executed the engagement letter at 3:20. She walked me to the elevator at 3:40. She put her hand briefly on my forearm and said, "Nadine, you are doing the right thing in the only way it can be done." I nodded. I rode the elevator down. I drove home. I told Daniel that night that I was working with an attorney on something related to my father's estate. He said okay. He did not ask further. The notification of original information was filed on the 17th of December, 2023, in the Federal Complaint Office of the DOJ Antitrust Division. The seal was applied. The matter went dark to the public for 40 months. I gave Crestline 4 weeks' notice on the morning of January 17th, 2024. I told Garrett, in his office, that I was leaving for family reasons related to my mother's health. My mother's health was fine. The lie was small and necessary. Garrett expressed regret. He said the Q1 model would be hard to rebuild without me. He thanked me for 8 years. He shook my hand. He did not stand up from his desk to do it. My last day was Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. I packed a small box of personal items, walked out at 2 p.m., drove home, and stood in the kitchen for a long time without taking off my coat. What I did not know that day, and what Etunde would tell me 7 months later, was that Crestline IT had executed a standard departing employee remediation on my workstation that afternoon, which included a deletion of all non-corporate folders in my Outlook, including the folder x-do-not-forward. The original recording on the Crestline server had also been retention purged in November. As of February 15th, the only remaining copies of the recording were the WAV file on the SanDisk drive inside the Tunisian Zatar tin in Dearborn, the copy Etunde had logged into her firm's document control system, and the forensic copy with the DOJ Antitrust Division. I worked as an independent financial consultant from March 2024 through March 2027. 3 small, not-for-profit clients in the Princeton area, modest invoicing. Daniel kept his NJ Transit job. Emil graduated from Hopewell Valley and started at Penn State Engineering in August 2024. Marielle moved up to high school in September. My mother turned 76 in August 2025 and decided to keep the bungalow rather than move closer to one of us. The 40 months under seal were unlike any other interval in my life. I could not speak about the matter to my husband. I could not speak to my mother. I had 2 phone calls a month with Etunde, almost always on Fridays at 1 p.m., in which she would update me on the progress of the DOJ investigation without telling me anything specific. The grand jury was impaneled in June 2024. The FBI conducted its first round of interviews in spring 2025. Garrett was interviewed by the FBI on the 17th of March, 2026. I would not see Garrett again until the third day of his sentencing, 18 months later. The seal came off on the 7th of March, 2027. The unsealed indictment named 5 defendants: Garrett Whitfield Stanton, age 60, VP Pricing and Market Access at Crestline Therapeutics; Surya Krishnan Venkataraman Hart, age 56, VP Pricing US at Merit Pharmaceuticals; 3 additional pricing directors at the other 3 generic injectable manufacturers in the conspiracy. The charge against Garrett was 1 count of conspiracy to fix prices, in violation of 15 U.S.C. 1, the Sherman Act, Section 1. The charge against Surya was the same count, plus 1 count of wire fraud, because 2 of the courtesy calls had crossed state lines. Garrett pleaded guilty on the 14th of May, 2027, in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, before Judge Caroline Manfredi-Pesach. He pleaded under cooperation with a single-count plea. He did not allocute beyond the statutory minimum. He did not apologize. He never apologized publicly in any forum before or after his sentencing on the 22nd of September to a term of 22 months federal custody to be served at the Federal Correctional Institution Allenwood Camp in Pennsylvania. Surya pleaded on the 11th of April, 3 weeks earlier. He was sentenced on the 14th of August to 32 months at Federal Correctional Institution Fort Dix in New Jersey. The corporate settlement with the DOJ Antitrust Division and the 47 state attorneys general was filed on the 14th of July, 2027. The aggregate resolution was $1.161 billion across 5 generic injectable manufacturers, comprised of $722 million in civil settlement and $439 million in criminal corporate fines. Crestline's share was $312 million civil plus $187 million criminal, totaling $499 million. The Crestline Chief Executive Officer, Mark Lassiter Pemberton, was not indicted and was not named in the resolution other than by title. The Chief Commercial Officer was named only as an executive officer. None of the 7 members of the pricing committee, other than Garrett, was indicted. The corporate veil held. The 5-year compliance program remediation order ran from the date of settlement through the second quarter of 2032. My reward share under the DOJ Antitrust Division whistleblower program was settled at $55 million gross. After Etunde's contingent fee at 28% and federal tax at the long-term rate, the net to me was approximately $30 million. The first disbursement landed in an escrow account on the 3rd of August, 2027, 6 days after Surya's sentencing. I did not buy anything. I did not change houses. I did not change cars. I did not tell Marielle, who was then 16, or Emile, who was then 20, the dollar amount. I told them that something good had happened that had to do with their grandfather, and that we were going to build something with it. They accepted that. On the morning of the 7th of October, 2027, in Etunde's office in New Haven, 3 friends and I filed the charter for a 501c3 not-for-profit foundation in the state of Connecticut. The foundation is named the Boutros Maroon Generic Pricing Transparency Foundation. The 3 other founders are Etunde herself, Sister Marie Rose Gaddis Sadeh of the Antonine Sisters of Bashari, who at 87 was named as a non-U.S. founding trustee, and Glenmore Owusu Achebe, the CPA from Atlanta, who had carried me through the prior matter in 2026 and who had agreed to serve as treasurer. The foundation has 3 pillars. The first pillar is academic research grants in the field of generic pharmaceutical pricing transparency, structured as 3 multi-year endowed fellowships at 3 universities. The first cohort, announced November 2027, consists of 1 fellowship at the Wharton Healthcare Management Program at the University of Pennsylvania, 1 at the Tauber Institute at Michigan-Ross, and 1 at the Solomon Center for Health Law and Policy at Yale. Each fellowship funds 1 senior fellow at $180,000 per year for 5 years, with the explicit charge to publish on government price reporting reliability, on industry conference attendance pattern analysis, and on the price signal coordination risk literature. The The fellowships are restricted to research, not advocacy. The second pillar is direct consumer redress microgrants for Medicare Part D beneficiaries whose copays were elevated on the 14 molecules covered by the DOJ matter. The microgrants are administered through a partnership with the National Council on Aging, with a maximum grant per beneficiary of $4,800. The first 6 microgrant checks went out on the 15th of December, 2027. The third check that day was hand-delivered, at his request, by me to Mr. Erasmus Walter Cunningham at his daughter Tasha's house 3 days before Christmas. He had asked for cash because the bank made him nervous. I brought him 4,800s in a clean white envelope. He sat in his recliner and counted them once, slowly, his hands steady. He set the envelope on the side table next to his lamp. He said, "Thank you, Mrs. Karam." He said, "When you walk past my place tomorrow, knock on the door and have a cup of tea." I said I would. The third pillar is the reconstruction of the kitchen of the Antonine Sisters Convent in Pshari, which had been substantially damaged in a fire in the summer of 2025. The kitchen had been used continuously by the sisters for the same purpose as in 1962. The reconstruction project, scoped at $1.1 million, broke ground in March 2028. The new oven was installed in the second week of May. The kitchen reopened the second Sunday of June 2028. That second Sunday in June is the date the third anchor scene in this story takes place. I will get there in a moment. I am the chair of the foundation. I am paid nothing. The position is structured as a volunteer trustee role. I work 8 to 12 hours a week on foundation administration. I have a small home office, the converted kitchen pantry with the white IKEA desk, the same one where I had stood at the counter for 63 minutes on the 29th of October 2023. The olive wood cross from my father is still hanging above the desk. The photograph of my father at St. Sharbel Warren is still next to it. The first anchor scene takes place on the 23rd of December 2027 at 16:14 Eastern Standard Time at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan, in the Maronite section. A Thursday afternoon. The light is low and gray. There is a thin crust of frost on the grass between the rows of headstones. The trees are bare. I have driven to Detroit alone for the long Christmas weekend. My mother is expecting me at her bungalow for Socialnik dinner the next afternoon. Daniel and the children are flying in Friday. I have driven in alone a day early because of the cemetery visit. The Maronite section of Holy Sepulchre is at the far eastern end of the property, near a cedar grove the groundskeepers planted in 1973 for a group of Lebanese Dearborn families. My father's headstone is in row 11, plot 27. The granite is a medium gray with fine black flecks. The carved cedar in the upper left corner is in low relief. The Garshuni inscription along the bottom edge, running the full width of the stone, is the Mother Superior's sentence, in Syriac script with Arabic phonetics. Ya binti, al-haqq kad yathqul, walakinnahu la yamut. I am wearing a long wool coat in dark navy and a black knit scarf my mother gave me in 1998. In my left hand, I am holding a string of 15 olive wood worry beads, a saba, sent to me by Sister Marie Rose in early November. She had written that the beads were carved from the wood of the original convent door of 1957, replaced during the kitchen reconstruction. The beads are a deep amber where the wood is oldest. I stand at the stone for 11 minutes without speaking. My breath is visible in the air. I do not pray any formal prayer. I think about the Antonine Sisters' kitchen in 1962. I think about my father, aged 14, sweeping ash. I think about the sentence. I think about Tasha Cunningham Worthing's hand on her father's shoulder on Pinhook Road on the 29th of October, 2023. I lean forward. I place the saba on the flat top edge of the granite, between the carved cedar in the upper left corner and the Garshuni inscription along the bottom. The beads rest in a small, loose pile, the cord coiled. I straighten up. I say one sentence aloud, in Arabic, in a voice that is no louder than the wind in the cedars on the slope to the east. Yaba, al-haqq lam yamut. Papa, the truth has not died. I do not cry. I stand in the silence for another 4 minutes. I walk back to my mother's car. I drive west on 8 Mile Road. I stop at a Maronite bakery on Warren and Mound to pick up 2 pounds of al-haqq for my mother. I arrive at the bungalow on Schaefer Highway at 1740. My mother opens the door. She hands me a cup of tea before I have taken off my coat. She has read about the indictment in the Detroit Free Press in March. She has not asked me for any details. She does not ask me that night. She asks me about Marielle's clarinet recital. The second anchor scene takes place on the 14th of March, 2028, at 9:14 in the morning Eastern Daylight Time, on the porch of the small craftsman house at 1 Pinhook Road in Hopewell, where Tasha Cunningham Worthing now lives. Mr. Cunningham moved in with Tasha permanently in November 2027 after his hip mobility deteriorated further. He uses a walker indoors. He uses a cane on the porch. Sergeant the Beagle is 12 years old now, his muzzle entirely white, and he sleeps most of the day in a small wicker bed at Mr. Cunningham's feet. I have been walking Sergeant on Tuesdays and Thursdays since November because Mr. Cunningham's hip no longer takes the full loop. I do the walk from Tasha's house north along Pinhook to the Township Park, around the loop trail and back, about 35 minutes total. Sergeant walks slowly. I do not rush him. The walks have become one of the small mercies of my week. On the 14th of March, a Tuesday, I bring Sergeant back to the porch at 9:14. Mr. Cunningham is sitting in his folding lawn chair, the same chair he had used at his old house. He is wearing a green wool cardigan over a flannel shirt. There is a thermos of coffee on the small wicker side table next to him. He nods at me. I unclip Sergeant. The dog walks to his wicker bed. He turns 3 times and lies down with a soft grunt. Mr. Cunningham gestures to the second folding chair. I sit. He says, "How is the new foundation going?" I say, "It is doing what it should." The first 6 checks went out in December. 2 of the 3 university fellowships are now filled. Wharton announced their senior fellow last week. The Bashari kitchen has its new chimney installed. He nods. He says, "That is good." He says, "Can I ask you something that might be impertinent?" I say, "You can ask me anything, Mr. Cunningham." He says, "You have been a quiet woman the whole time we have known each other. Quiet does not mean silent. Quiet means careful. I want to ask you why you sat on what you knew for as long as you did. I do not ask because I am owed an answer. I ask because I have wondered." I do not speak for a long time. He waits. I say, "Mr. Cunningham, I sat on it for 13 months because I had been trained for 22 years to do my job in a room where the people who voted were senior to me, and where the senior people had a Manhattan antitrust partner on the speakerphone, and where my piece of the work was to model the prices and not to interpret the calls. I told myself I was a modeler, not an interpreter. I told myself that until the day you and Tasha stood at my driveway, and Tasha said you had had to do new math on the diabetes pill. And at that moment, I realized that the work I had been doing for 22 years had had to do with one specific person on my own street, and that the modeler was the interpreter, and that I had been hiding from a sentence my father had spoken to me when I was 11 years old. He listens. He nods. He says nothing for 2 full minutes. Then he says, "Mrs. Karam, my own father was a Pullman porter on the Detroit to Chicago line from 1941 to 1968. He was a man of careful words. He said one thing to me when I was about 15, the one time my mother and I had to take in a board cousin from down south who turned out to be a thief. He said, 'Son, the right time to fix a wagon is the time you finally see that the wagon is broken. Not before, not after, the time you see it.' He said it the day we found out about the cousin. He did not say it again. I have remembered it for 56 years. He looks at me directly. His eyes are clear. He says, 'You saw the wagon was broken on the 29th of October, 2023. You fixed it. I do not know what you went through between October 11, 2022 and that Sunday. I have my guesses. I will not ask. I will only say, you fixed it. That counts.' I sit for a long time. I look at Sergeant. Sergeant lifts his head briefly, then puts it back on his paws. I say, "Yes, sir, I will carry that." I stand. I kiss Mr. Cunningham briefly on the top of his head, which I have never done before in 14 years of knowing him. He pats my hand. I walk home. The walk is 6 blocks. I do not cry on the walk. I cry for 10 minutes in my kitchen, leaning against the counter, where I had stood for 63 minutes on the 29th of October, 2023. The crying is brief and quiet. Daniel is at NJ Transit. The house is empty. I am 49 years old that morning, 6 weeks before my 50th birthday. I make a cup of peppermint tea. I drink it slowly. The third anchor scene takes place on the 11th of June, 2028, at 11:47 in the morning Eastern Daylight Time, in the Parish Hall of St. Sharbel Maronite Catholic Church in Warren, Michigan. The 11th of June is the parish's annual Founders Sunday, a celebration of the original Lebanese and Syrian families who founded the parish in 1958. The Divine Liturgy was sung at 10. The reception in the parish hall began at 11:30. Sister Marie Rose Gaddis Saad has flown in from Beirut. She is 88. She is the last surviving Antonine sister who taught my father at the orphanage school in Bashari in the 1950s and early 60s. She has come for the rededication of the parish hall kitchen, which the foundation contributed to as a parallel project to the Bashari kitchen reconstruction. The two projects were finished within 4 weeks of each other. The parish hall is a long, rectangular room on the lower level of the church. The walls are painted a soft beige. There are 16 folding tables set up for the reception, with white tablecloths and small bouquets of white carnations. The kitchen is at the far end, through a wide doorway. The smell of the kitchen on a Founder's Sunday is hashwe, kibbeh, manish, sambusek, and the bitter coffee my father used to call kawa marron. I am sitting at the third table from the kitchen door, on the far side, in folding chair number 4. The chairs are numbered with small white circular stickers on the underside of the seat. Chair 4 is the chair my father sat in at every Founder's Sunday and every parish council meeting from 1986 through 2011. I learned this from Father Elias, the current pastor, when I asked him in November 2027 where my father's chair had been. Father Elias is leading Sister Marie Rose by the right arm. She is wearing the full Antonine habit, black with white scapular and veil. She is leaning on a polished wooden cane her brother carved for her in 1992. She walks slowly. She acknowledges parish members with a small smile and a quiet nod as she passes. Father Elias brings her directly to my table. He bows slightly and steps back. Sister Marie Rose stops at the table. She places her cane against the edge of the table. She extends both her hands and takes my right hand into them. Her hands are dry and warm and very thin. She looks at my face for a long time. Her eyes are a pale gray blue. She does not blink. She speaks. Her Arabic is the Levantine of the high mountain villages. Her Aramaic is the Syriac liturgical register that the older Antonine sisters keep for the most consequential blessings. She mixes the two as she speaks, the way the old Maronite blessings mix them.
يا بنتي al-haqq قد yathqul walakinnahu la yamut.
وأنتِ يا بنتي حملته إلى الآخر. My daughter, the truth may grow heavy, but it does not die. And you, my daughter, you carried it to the end. That is the third time the sentence appears in this story. The first was the Mother Superior in the convent kitchen in 1962. The second was me, alone in a kitchen pantry in Hopewell, speaking to a photograph of my father in October of 2023. The third is now, Sister Marie Rose taking my right hand in both hers at the third table from the kitchen door on Founder's Sunday, 2028, with the extension I had not known existed. And you, my daughter, you carried it to the end. I do not answer. I lift her hands gently and bring them to my forehead. This is a Maronite gesture of blessing. She accepts it. She murmurs a short closing prayer in Syriac, of which I catch only the final word, which means peace. She releases my hand. Father Elias steps forward. He guides her to the kitchen entrance to receive the formal rededication blessing. The room applauds softly. I sit in chair number 4 for 43 minutes. I do not move. I eat my mother's hashwa from a small paper plate with a clear plastic fork. I eat slowly. Through the open door of the kitchen, I can see the parish children playing in the gravel of the side courtyard, their voices coming through the wide window above the new oven. My mother is at the next table with my brother Antown and his family. My brother Sharbel is at the front of the hall talking to Father Elias. Daniel is in Hopewell on a weekend NJ Transit Signals upgrade. Emile and Marielle are at the bungalow on Schaefer Highway with my mother. The hall slowly empties as families finish their plates and walk out into the warm June afternoon. My mother walks over at 12:30, sits in chair 5, the chair she sat in beside my father for 25 years, and puts her hand on my arm. She says nothing. We sit together for 11 minutes. Then she says, in Arabic, "Ya bnayti, are you hungry? I have one more sambusek for you." I say, "Yes, Mama." She brings me the sambusek. I eat it slowly. I drive back to Hopewell that evening, the long way, through Toledo and up the I-80. I arrive home at 3:30 in the morning. Daniel is asleep. I sit at the small white IKEA desk in the kitchen pantry home office for 20 minutes. The olive wood cross from my father is above the desk. I drink a glass of water. I go upstairs. I sleep. There is no triumphal moment in this story. There is no public claim of vindication. There is no closing speech. There is a folder named X-DO-not-forward that does not exist anymore because Crestline IT deleted it on the 14th of February, 2024. There is a 64 gigabyte SanDisk drive in a Tunisian za'atar tin on the 3rd shelf of my mother's kitchen pantry in Dearborn, where it has remained since November 6, 2023. She has not asked what is in it. She will not ask. There is a granite headstone in the Maronite section of Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan, with a Garshuni inscription along its lower edge that reads, "Ya binti, al-haqq kad yathqul, walakinnahu la yamut." There is a string of 15 olive wood worry beads that sat on the flat top of that stone for 47 minutes on the afternoon of the 23rd of December, 2027, and which the groundskeeper found the following morning and placed in a small glass display case at the base of the cedar tree. There is a beagle named Sergeant, who is now 13 years old and who walks more slowly than he used to. There is a folding lawn chair on a porch on Pinhook Road, where a 73-year-old man drinks coffee in the early morning. There is a parish hall in Warren, Michigan, with a kitchen that smells of hashwa and kibbeh on the 2nd Sunday of June every year. There is an Antonine sister who at 88 took my right hand in both of hers and said the sentence with the extension I had not known. There is a 6-minute and 43-second WAV file that has been entered into the federal court docket at the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, where it will remain until the end of the Republic. There is a 49-year-old finance analyst in a kitchen pantry in Hopewell on the last evening of a long Sunday in June, sitting at a small white IKEA desk under an olive wood cross from Bashari, with a feeling in her chest that is not pride and is not grief, but bears a closer resemblance to weight. The truth, in her hand, in her chest, in her father's stone, in her neighbor's small new math, in her own 13 months of silence, has grown heavy. It has not died. I carried it. I will go on carrying it. That is all the file ever asked of me. That is all I had to give.